Garage Gang, sit up. It's Tuesday night, December 23rd, and I'm about to save you a lot of confusion, a little money, and maybe your dignity. I'm Avatar John. I've got the wheel, and tonight, the market is lying with a straight face. Gold just hit 4,500. Silver leapfrog Apple like it pays dividends now. The S&P printed a record close while small caps quietly bled out. Bitcoin's supply is disappearing, and price doesn't care. Ethereum is getting bought in size, quietly. Volatility is asleep with one eye open. If that already sounds contradictory, good. That means you're early. Now here's the hook, and I know you felt it. Triple X is in town. He spent the day in the trenches. No charts, no noise, straight whale hunting. He found some heat. We know you want it. You're not getting it yet. Because before we talk about what he found, we're going to talk about what's actually going on and why chasing headlines right now is how you get embarrassed. But first, do me a favor. Smash the like, hit follow, and share this with your fellow crypto bros. You know the one, the guy at work who still believes in Pepe with his whole heart. The guy who never sold, never flinched, and never shuts up about it. We like that guy. He deserves better information. Lock in, because tonight we're breaking down why this market looks calm, feels wrong, and is one catalyst away from violence. This is The Garage, and we're just getting started. The day started with numbers and ended with a tell. Sarcastic. Let's get one thing straight before anyone starts chest thumping about strong data. Yes, the day started with numbers hitting. Pause. Q3 GDP printed 4.3%. On the surface, that's a banger. That's the kind of number politicians point at. The kind of number that makes headlines scream resilient economy. The kind of number that gets retail thinking the coast is clear. But markets don't trade the surface. They trade what's underneath. Exhales sharply. So let's peel it back. That GDP number wasn't driven by exploding demand or a confident consumer. It was driven by inventory builds and import math. Warehouses got filled, supply chains caught up, accounting did the heavy lifting. That's not forward momentum, that's rear view mirror economics. It tells you where we've been, not where we're headed. Now look at the other side of the ledger. Consumer confidence is sitting at 89. That's not a celebratory number. That's not let's spend. That's let's be careful. People aren't acting like 4% growth. They're acting like things are tight. Credit is heavier. Discretionary spending is thinner. Households are managing, not celebrating. And this is where the tell shows up. Growth data says everything's great. The consumer says, I'm stretched. Those two stories cannot both be true for long. When GDP looks strong but confidence is weak, that's not bullish. That's fragile. It means growth is being supported by mechanics, not momentum. It means future demand is vulnerable. It means revisions tend to go down, not up. Markets understand this instinctively. They don't argue with the number. They discount it. They look at the tension between what the data says and how people actually feel. And when that tension shows up, markets don't celebrate. They hesitate. That's exactly what you saw today. Not panic, not collapse, unease. Hard assets started speaking louder. Rates pushed higher instead of calming down. Equities floated instead of breaking out. The market didn't cheer the GDP print. It questioned it. And when markets start questioning data, instead of applauding it, you are no longer in a clean expansion phase. You are in a late cycle transition where positioning matters more than optimism and structure matters more than headlines. That's what today actually told you. And if you understand that, everything else that happened tonight makes sense. Now let's keep going. What actually moved the tape and what didn't? Now that you understand the tension, let's talk about what actually moved markets today. And what was just noise, because this is where most people get it backwards. Sarcastic. They think markets move on headlines. They don't. They move on where capital chooses to hide. Today, capital didn't chase growth. It didn't chase optimism. It didn't chase the GDP number. It ran for hard cover. Exhales sharply. Gold didn't drift higher today. It repriced. Surprised. $4,500. That is not a trade. That is not speculation. That is sovereign and monetary risk being priced outside the equity market. Silver didn't just rally, it went vertical. So hard it leapfrogged Apple as one of the largest assets on the planet. That should make you uncomfortable. Because when metals are screaming and equities are smiling, someone is lying. And it's not the metals. Now look at volatility. The VIX sat around 14 like nothing was wrong. No panic, no protection, no fear premium. That's not calm. That's a volatility trap. Fear didn't go into options. It didn't go into hedges. It went into physical, finite assets. That's how you know this isn't about a bad day. It's about trust. Trust in currency, trust in policy, trust in the idea that inflation is handled. Now check rates. The 10-year didn't relax after GDP. It pushed higher toward 4.17. Why? Because the bond market doesn't care about celebration numbers. It cares about persistence. And the GDP deflator printed 3.7%. That's inflation refusing to die. So while headlines said growth, rates said credibility problem. When rates do that, you listen. Equities, they floated. The S&P printed a record close, yes, but don't confuse height with health. This was a narrow melt-up. AI mega caps did the lifting, small caps sold. Breadth deteriorated quietly. Capital didn't flood the market. It hid in scale, in incumbents, in names that can survive a slowdown. That's not early cycle enthusiasm. That's late cycle self-preservation, strong generals, weak soldiers, and that combination, hard assets screaming, rates pushing back, volatility asleep, equities drifting on thin holiday liquidity, does not resolve sideways. It resolves violently. And this is exactly where crypto starts telling you the truth. Next, we get into why Bitcoin scarcity didn't lift price, why Ethereum is being accumulated quietly, and why XRP looks weak while its structure improves. Stay with me. Crypto told the truth, just not the way people wanted. Now, this is where crypto stops lying. Pause. Because while equities floated and metals screamed, crypto did something far more honest. It refused to celebrate. Size. Bitcoin didn't break out. It didn't collapse either. It just sat there tight, compressed, uncomfortable. And that's not weakness. That's scarcity colliding with thin liquidity. Bitcoin exchange supply is sitting at extreme lows. The supply shock is real, and yet price barely moved. That's the paradox that drives people insane. But it only looks like a paradox if you don't understand structure. Scarcity lifts price when liquidity shows up. Scarcity does nothing when liquidity is parked. Right now, liquidity is not trading, whispers, it's waiting. ETF flows were flat to slightly negative. Corporate treasuries are buying quietly. Coins are moving into new wallets, not onto exchanges. That's accumulation without applause. That's positioning without price discovery. Now look at Ethereum, because this is where you can see intent. While Bitcoin stalled, Ethereum got bought in size. Over $200 million worth of ETH accumulated quietly by known institutional players. No headlines, no victory laps, just balance sheets adding exposure. That's not momentum chasing. That's utility-driven conviction. Smart money didn't want volatility here. It wanted exposure before the next phase. And that tells you something important. This market is not in distribution. It's in selection. Some assets are being treated like insurance, some like infrastructure, some like chips on a table that nobody wants to touch yet. And then there's XRP. XRP didn't move the way people expected because it's stuck between two worlds, structurally stronger, price capped, ETF absorption continues. Rails are maturing, but distribution from large holders is still capping upside. That's not failure. That's timing friction. Infrastructure assets don't pump during compression. They resolve after volatility clears. That's the part retail hates because it requires patience instead of excitement. So here's the clean takeaway. Crypto didn't miss the move today. It told you the move hasn't started yet. And when crypto refuses to chase optimism while metals and bonds are waving red flags, you pay attention because crypto is not the problem here. It's the canary. Next, we get into why this setup doesn't last and where the real release comes from. Stay locked in. Why this setup doesn't last and what breaks it now. Listen carefully because this is where patience turns into profit or regret. Setups like this do not persist. Compression plus contradictions plus parked liquidity always resolves. The only mystery is what pulls the pin. Right now, you've got three forces stacked on top of each other. First, volatility suppression. Equity vol is asleep. Options are cheap. Holiday liquidity is thin. That's not stability. That's Tinder. When vol is suppressed while risk is being priced elsewhere, metals, rates, FX, it's only a matter of time before options catch up. Second, rates and credibility. The bond market rejected the celebration today. The 10-year pushed higher on sticky inflation. That's a warning shot. If rates keep grinding up, equity multiples don't get a vote. They compress. And when equities finally acknowledge that, crypto feels it instantly because crypto trades 24/7 and absorbs the shock first. Third, liquidity timing. Stablecoins are being minted and moved, but not deployed. That tells you capital is waiting for confirmation, not chasing drift. When that capital decides the coast is clear, it doesn't trickle in. It moves all at once. That's when scarcity matters. That's when Bitcoin's low exchange supply stops being a statistic and starts being a weapon. This is why boring markets are dangerous. Everyone gets lulled. Everyone gets overconfident. Everyone assumes tomorrow looks like today, and then it doesn't. So here's the framework. If volatility expands, it will drag equities and force crypto lower first, briefly, before the next phase begins. If volatility stays suppressed while liquidity turns on, scarcity wins and price gaps higher. Either way, sideways is the least likely outcome. That's what compression actually means. It's not safety. It's stored energy, and stored energy always finds a way out. Next, before we close this down, we're going to talk about what XXX saw in the trenches, why it matters, and why nothing was traded yet. Stay with me. Now let's talk about AI, because this is where the release shows up first. Rushed. Now here's where most people get it backwards. They think AI was the move today. It wasn't. Exhale sharply. AI was the container. When markets enter compression, capital doesn't run toward risk. It hides inside the strongest version of it. That's what AI megacaps were today. The S&P and NASDAQ didn't rip because the economy suddenly improved. They drifted higher because capital wanted scale, dominance, and cash flow, not upside. AI didn't lead. Pause. AI absorbed. That distinction matters because absorption is what happens before a regime break. Now look at the behavior. AI megacaps pushed indexes to records, but small caps sold. Breadth deteriorated. That tells you this wasn't optimism. It was defensive positioning inside growth. Capital wasn't saying, I want more risk. It was saying, if I'm taking risk, I want the biggest, safest balance sheet on the board. That's late cycle behavior. And here's the part most people missed. While AI equities floated, bond volatility stayed elevated, moves stayed awake, VIX stayed asleep. That divergence never lasts. Either bond stress forces equity volatility higher, or liquidity has to flood in to justify the valuations. There is no third option. Now layer in what actually changed in AI today. This was not about models, not about benchmarks, not about Gemini versus GPT. This was about control. NVIDIA didn't just sell chips. They bought the logistics layer of compute. By taking control of the software that decides which jobs run on which GPUs and when, NVIDIA moved from hardware supplier to gatekeeper. That is the quiet move that reshapes the entire AI ecosystem. Why does that matter for crypto and DePIN? Because the entire decentralized compute thesis depends on idle enterprise GPUs, universities, national labs, corporate clusters. Those GPUs don't float freely. They're scheduled. And now the scheduler has an owner. That changes the game. From here, there are only two paths. Either AI compute becomes more centralized and permissioned, or decentralized networks are forced to integrate, comply, and prove they belong. There is no more gray zone. That's why this matters right now during compression, because when volatility releases, capital will not scatter. It will concentrate into platforms with control, into infrastructure with permission, into networks that can survive regulation and scale. AI wasn't the story today. AI was the mask. And underneath that mask, the market is choosing who gets to matter next. That's the AI tell. Next, we go into what XXX saw in the trenches and why he didn't touch a single thing yet. All right, let me tell you how today actually played out. While everyone else was arguing about GDP prints, AI headlines, and why nothing felt right, XXX did what professionals do when markets get weird. He went quiet. No tweeting, no group chats, no hype. Pause. He opened Axiom. He opened BullX. And he went into the Solana trenches with intent. Not to guess, not to hope, to read flow. This market was compressed. Liquidity thin. Volatility asleep but dangerous. That's not when you spray trades. That's when you hunt. Triple X sat down with 30 Solana, not ego size, execution size. Axiom showed him where the liquidity actually was. BullX showed him where the volume was real, not spoofed. Together, they told the same story. One pocket of heat stood out. Pump Fund V2, brand new, fresh pool. Enough liquidity to move, enough volume to matter. Clean enough holder distribution to trade, not fall in love with. This wasn't a belief play. This wasn't a thesis. This was a structure trade. Flow stayed hot. Liquidity held. Momentum followed through. Triple X didn't hesitate. He didn't overthink it. He didn't convince himself it was the next big thing. He took what the market offered, and when the move completed, he did the most important thing in trading. He left 30 Solana in, 61 Solana out. No screenshots, no victory lap, no round trip. That's how you operate in CHOP. You respect risk, you respect timing, you respect exits. That one trade said more about this market than 1,000 headlines. Because while metals are repricing, rates are warning, equities are floating on holiday air, and crypto is coiled, opportunity still exists for people who know how to read the tape. Triple X didn't force a narrative today. He traded reality. And now, he's home for Christmas. Which brings me to this. There will be no show tomorrow. There will be no show on Christmas. We'll be back December 26th, clear-headed, rested, and ready for whatever this market decides to do next. To everyone in the garage, Merry Christmas. Enjoy your family. Protect your capital. Protect your peace. Same garage, same standards. Engines hot.